She stared at her baby for hours as she watched her scream at the top of her voice. "This is not my baby," Bukola said to her husband, who was confused at what she was talking about. "How can you say the child is not yours?" He replied Bukola, who tried to explain to him that her baby no longer looked the same. Once upon a time, there lived a pregnant woman who gave birth to a baby girl on one fateful night, which was a lunar eclipse. Her name was Bukola, and she gave birth to a beautiful baby girl after almost 7 years of waiting. Her entire family, including her husband, gathered to celebrate with her because they knew how long she had struggled to have a child. They showered her with so many gifts, as well as songs of praises, and Bukola was so grateful to have supportive people around her. She was so excited to finally be a mother, as she spent hours staring at her precious daughter, who brought so much joy to her heart. The next morning, a naming ceremony was held, and the entire village gathered to witness the naming of the child, who was called Folklore, meaning a child under God's protection. The entire village jubilated as they welcomed the newest addition to their village. As is their tradition, after the naming of the child's mother is obligated to sit in front of her hut to receive gifts and prayers from well-wishers, as it is believed that these gifts and prayers would fortify the child's spirit and carve out a path of prosperity and protection throughout the child's life. So Bukola sat under the shade of a huge tree next to her hut, holding her newborn baby in her arms as she received the villagers' gifts and prayers. However, amongst the well-wishers was a strange-looking woman who approached Bukola with a strange gift. The woman had in her hands 2 peculiar stones, one as dark as the rich earth, whilst the other was as bright as the moon. The strange-looking woman handed the stones to Bukola as she congratulated her for the birth of her twins, and Bukola tried to explain to the strange woman that she gave birth to one baby, but the strange woman looked her in the eyes and laughed, saying that her child was a twin. Bukola, puzzled as to why the strange woman was insisting that she gave birth to twins, called on her husband, who chased the weird woman away, believing that she was insane. A few hours later, when the ceremony was over, Bukola laid her baby on her bed to sleep. She then decided to head to the kitchen to prepare some food for her husband and herself when she heard a loud cry coming from the room. Bukola rushed to the room to check on her baby when she noticed something strange about the baby. Her face had changed completely into a different baby, and Bukola wondered if her eyes were playing a trick on her. She stared at her baby for hours as she watched her scream at the top of her voice. "This is not my baby," Bukola said to her husband, who was confused at what she was talking about. "How can you say the child is not yours?" He replied Bukola, who tried to explain to him that her baby no longer looked the same. Her husband Deji, finding it hard to believe her, carried the baby in his arms as he tried to get her to sleep, but the baby kept crying at the top of her voice. After hours of trying, Folklore finally took a nap in the morning, and Deji laid her on the bed to sleep. Bukola, trying to confirm what she saw the previous night, checked her daughter's face again and realized that her face was now back to normal. She wondered how this was possible, as she looked terrified at her child. It was then that she remembered what the strange woman said to her the previous day. Bukola rushed outside her hut to look for the strange stones given to her by the strange woman, which she had discarded in front of her hut, and after a few minutes of searching, she found the stones and decided to keep them in a safe place. She pondered on all the strange woman had said and couldn't take her mind off the fact that her daughter might be a twin. How is this possible? She said to herself as she tried to wrap her head around all that was happening. A few days later, Bukola decided to pay a visit to the local spiritualist, who informed her that her babies were twins, bound together in spirit, as the spirit of the second twin resided within her sister and was only made manifest at night. Bukola opened her eyes in shock, as she never imagined something like this to be possible. She now understood why her daughter's face changed at night and asked the spiritualist how this was possible, and the spiritualist told her that this happened because she gave birth on the night of an eclipse and that the baby received the power of both the moon and the earth. The spiritualist advised Bukola to embrace this dual essence in her daughter, as it was a sign of great potential and strength. Bukola returned home terrified of her own daughter. She told her husband all what the spiritualist had told her, and he too was terrified. Whenever night came, Bukola would become so afraid, as that was when the other twin manifested herself and yelled at the top of her voice. Their differences were so glaring, as the first twin was calm during the day, whilst the second was restless at night, and this terrified Bukola's husband, who became so terrified of his daughter as he proceeded to end his marriage with Bukola, believing that they were cursed. His decision to end their marriage broke Bukola's heart, as she did everything possible to make him stay, but nothing she did worked, as her husband became so terrified of their daughter and left. Bukola, unable to abandon her own baby, lived with her daughter and loved her, despite her terrifying condition, as she decided to do everything within her power to shield her from the outside world. She finally named the other twin Funsho, and after several years, her daughter Folusho grew into a very beautiful girl, so quiet and reserved. The girls in the village bullied and talked down on her because of how quiet she was. A certain girl named Omojo hated Folusho with all of her heart. It all started when Omojo's mother fell out with Folusho's mother in the local market. What had happened was that Folusho's mother lent some money to Omojo's mother, who promised to pay back in a few days. After several weeks, Omojo's mother failed to repay the money, and when Folusho's mother approached her to request for her money, she burst out in anger and began to rain insults at her, saying that she would pay the money whenever she is ready. This escalated into a full-blown argument, drawing the attention of the entire market. The heated argument left a bitter rift between the two families, a rift that Omojo took to heart as she transferred her mother's enmity to Folusho, leading to years of bullying and disdain. One morning, whilst Folusho was heading to school, Omojo waited for her by a lonely path where she knew Folusho always plied on her way to school. She harassed Folusho and took the money that Folusho had in her little purse. Folusho pleaded with Omojo to return the money because it was her school fees, but Omojo pushed her in the head and dared her to take the money from her. Folusho, weak and helpless, did everything possible to retrieve the money from Omojo, but failed as Omojo ran away with the money. Devastated and confused, Folusho returned home and reported the incident to her mother, who rushed to Omojo's home to request for the money. Omojo's mother called Bukola a liar as she rained insults on her, chasing her out of her hut and warning her never to come close to their vicinity again. Bukola returned home sad as she spent her whole day thinking of how to raise another money for her daughter's school fees. She decided to pay her ex-husband a visit to see if he could be of help to her, but was welcomed with hostility as her ex-husband chased her away from his home, saying that he never wanted to see her again in his life. Bukola returned home sad as she watched her daughter, who sat in a corner reading a book. Her mates were all in school, but she was home because of a bully who had made her life a living hell. When night came, Bukola sat in her room sad as she wept silently. The pain of watching her daughter remain at home another day whilst her mates were all in school broke her heart as she pondered on what to do. In that moment, her daughter Funsho, the hidden twin, walked into her mother's room and held out something to her. "Take, mother, and wipe away your tears," she said as she handed some money over to her mother. "Where did you get this money from?" Bukola looked up at her daughter and realized that it was her hidden twin Funsho. Funsho then revealed to her mother that the money was the same money that Omojo had taken away from her sister Folusho a few days ago. Bukola could not believe her eyes as she wondered how this was possible. What she did not know was that Funsho had the power to grant the wishes of those that she loved at night time through the help of the strange stones that the old woman gave to her mother on their naming ceremony. This was the reason why Funsho was able to bring back the money stolen by Omojo, as her mother Bukola wished for its return at night time. Funsho then told her mother Bukola to make another wish, and Bukola wished for a happy life for her daughter, free from any form of bullying. The next morning, Folusho was so happy to head back to school. However, as she plied the lonely path that she usually took to school, she was stopped by Omojo again, who tried to take her fees a second time. As Omojo stretched forth her hand to grab Folusho's purse, her hands turned into 3 branches as she screamed out in terror. "What have you done to me?" she asked Folusho, who looked at her in shock. Omojo ran home terrified to tell her mother all that had happened, and her mother, confused as to what to do, decided to take her daughter to a very powerful man in the village who told them that the only person who could transform Omojo's hand back to normal was the girl who she wronged. The powerful man revealed that they had to go plead with the said girl, as only the girl had the power to set Omojo free. Omojo and her mother could not believe that they had to go plead with the people that they so despised. Filled with pride, they decided to visit another powerful woman who told them the same thing. Unable to escape the consequences of their actions, Omojo and her mother swallowed their pride as they approached Folusho and her mother to plead for their forgiveness. Despite their apology, they realized that Omojo's hands remained the same. Folusho, on seeing the distressing look on Omojo's face, felt a deep compassion for her. Despite all the terrible things she had done to her in the past, she knew she held the power to restore Omojo, but she also understood that this was a critical moment of healing for the both families. "Omojo, I forgive you, not just for today, but for all the days that you did me wrong. Know this, that forgiveness is not just in words, but in how we choose to live our lives from this day forward." Folusho then placed her hand gently on Omojo's 3 hand, and a soft light enveloped Omojo's hand, and slowly the wood began to recede as flesh returned to its place. Omojo, seeing the transformation, paused in shock as tears streamed down her face. She realized the pain she had inflicted and the undeserving grace she had received from the same girl who she hurt constantly. Her mother, witnessing the miraculous transformation, broke down as she regretted all her evil actions towards Folusho and her mother, and the hatred she had harbored, which unconsciously spread to her own daughter. She apologized again, promising never to act wickedly towards others, and from that day forward, the relationship between the both families began to heal. Omojo and her mother worked on making amends, assisting Bukola and Folusho in their daily tasks, and standing up for Folusho against any form of bullying in the village. Funsho, the invisible twin, remained with her sister and mother, guiding them and providing their every wish, and as time went by, Folusho and her mother became extremely wealthy because of Funsho's ability to grant wishes, as she provided their every need through this medium. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we should always be careful of our actions around our children, because they watch and emulate all that we do. Never repay one's good for evil, as life always has a way of humbling the proud. Never bully a person, because bullying can have long-term psychological effects on its victims and family. Learn to treat people the way you like to be treated, and we will all live in a peaceful and happy world. I hope you enjoyed the story.
Like, subscribe and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.